Master of Science in Sustainable Viticulture and Enology is available at the Cattolica University in the location of Piacenza. It is a Master of Science that is totally given in English because we aim at having an audience that is made of international students. It's very important for us and especially for our country, since the wine export in Italy is over 55% of the total production. And the second main feature of this curriculum is going to be related to the term sustainability that is part of the title. Sustainability means a lot of things, but we would like with this curriculum to fill this term with a lot of content, and that is why we will address also very new topics that would go into, for instance, adaptation to climate change and also to the application of several precision viticulture techniques. Not to forget that having different students in the same room from different countries with different cultures is itself an item of social and personal growth for everybody.
During the experimental thesis, students will work closely to our team of researchers and they will participate in the activity of research project. With our network that is not only in the province of Piacenza but is spread around Italy, we are working now on 6 different European and regional projects. In this way, students will have the opportunity to deepen different avant-garde studies, for example, mechanization and robotics in viticulture, valorization of biodiversity, not only in field, but also with advanced vinification techniques and innovative agronomical techniques. You will learn not only how to acquire data in the field, but we'll teach you also how to use different equipment for lab and also for vineyard, and how to use innovative software for management and data analysis.
As a foreign student at the University of Cattolica, I know how intimidating it can seem to attend a university in another country. But the internationals office were always so helpful with anything that I needed and really took the intimidation factor away. While I was studying, I found that every single professor was so attentive to every individual person. Anything needed was answered. It creates such a personal relationship, and that's really great for progress. For me, while studying, I gained so much personally and professionally. With the interactions with professors and students from all over the world, to the field course and the field trips, turning theory and knowledge into practical skills, but also the chance to travel around the beautiful Italy.
Great. Welcome everybody to this webinar where you already saw a great introduction about the program. And in the next 45 minutes or so, you're going to hear much more details and actually a masterclass about the topic of viticulture and climate change. Before we go over to the professor, I would like to briefly explain to you some of the interactive options we have. So first of all, as already some people saw, we can chat to each other and say where you're logging in from. So already see some different countries joining in, so welcome everyone. Second of all, if you have any questions, you can write them through the panel called questions at the right bottom. You can do that at any time. We will be answering the questions at the end. And also I will be opening up a couple of pollings, so I'll poll questions to you, also to get to know you a little bit better. For example, I just opened up a question about your academic or professional background. So it would be great to hear what your background is. And last but not least, we have a little fun button as well to even make it more interactive. At the bottom of the screen, you see a button called React. If you click on that, you can give your reaction of choice, especially since it's a masterclass today. If you like what you're hearing or you want to comment on that, then by all means, give us a reaction so we feel, there's an audience there and to interact with us. So without further ado, however, I'm going to pass it over to the Università Cattolica, and we have the moderator of today, Arianna Malavasi, with us, and she will briefly introduce the topic and herself. Go ahead.
Thank you so much, Luke. I hope you can hear me well. Welcome, everyone, to today's masterclass on climate change and viticulture challenges and opportunities. My name is Arianna Malavasi. I represent the international office of Università Cattolica today, and I am the moderator of this webinar. The masterclass covers topics that are integral part of the Master of Science in Sustainable Viticulture and Enology, which is offered by Università Cattolica del Sacro Cuore. And by participating in today's masterclass, you're basically engaging with just one of the many critical subjects that are actually taught at a very in-depth level during the master degree. Before we actually start with the masterclass, let's meet our speakers of today and let's have a look at the agenda. So talking about speakers, speaker number one, Professor Stefano Poni. Hello, Prof. Poni. Can you hear me well? Hello. Full professor of viticulture at Cattolica's Faculty of Agricultural, Food and Environmental Sciences. Professor Poni is also the coordinator of the Master Degree in Sustainable Viticulture and Enology. And then we have huge welcome to Riccardo Castellana. Also welcome back, I should say, because Riccardo is a current student of our Master in Sustainable Viticulture and Enology, and he just got back from Australia. Yeah. After one semester spent abroad, but no spoilers. We're going to talk about this later. So let's have a look at the agenda of today. There we go. So first of all, we'll kick off our webinar with a very quick introduction about Università Cattolica del Sacro Cuore. We will delve into the masterclass on climate change and viticulture challenges and opportunities, which is going to be led by Professor Poni. Later, we'll hear more about the program and its peculiarities, again, Professor Poni. Then we'll hear inspiring stories from our current student, Riccardo, and I'm really very curious to know how was your experience in Australia. We will learn more about the procedures, the timeline, and the entry requirements for the master. Why? Because I'm sure that here today, and I'm talking also to Professor Poni and Riccardo, you know that we have potential students for our master degree. So I'm sure they would love to know more about the program, but also about the application procedure and timeline. And after that, we'll wrap up our session with a dedicated time for a live Q&A. Okay, so you'll have the opportunity to engage with us in real time. So please ask your question, as Luke was saying, in the Q&A box. So let's start by talking a little bit about Università Cattolica del Sacro Cuore. The choice of a location is a significant factor in higher education. And I guess you know that. If you're specializing, for example, in the viticulture, enology, food sector, wine sector, you probably know that Italy stands out with a very deep-rooted tradition in the field. It's a global leader in the wine industry, probably with France. Maybe Professor Poni, you want to delve into it later a little bit. I think we're there. But now we export as a country over 50% of our wine production. It's exported abroad. Consequently, I would say engaging with international stakeholders has become essential for our country. And that's, I guess, one of the reasons why we created such a master degree, fully English taught, very international in its soul, in sustainable viticulture and enology. Cattolica is a big university, okay, really big. It has 5 campuses spread across the country. You can see the map on the right side of the slide. But this master degree in sustainable viticulture and enology is taught at the university campus of Piacenza. Piacenza is located at about 1 hour train ride from Milano, but even more importantly, Piacenza is the place we call the Food Valley of Italy, because in Piacenza we produce the biggest amount of DOP products and DOC products, so cured meat, cheeses, and of course, wines. It is not a case that the Cattolica School Faculty of Agricultural, Food and Environmental Sciences is located, and Professor Poni and then Dacio faculty at the Piacenza campus. And that's where we teach the majority of our food and wine related products, okay? And we're talking about like courses which are ranked top 150 globally, according to QS rankings by subject. After this quick introduction about the program, about the university, Professor Poni, we get into the heart of this presentation of this masterclass. So let us experience a little bit of what potential student can actually live if they decide to apply for our Master of Science in Sustainable Viticulture and Enology.
Sure, Rihanna. Thank you for this very nice introduction. And well, welcome anyone. Thanks for attending. Yeah, I have 25 minutes to talk to you about something related to climate change and viticulture. Well, the topic is just huge, absolutely huge. And today, in a fairly short amount of time, I would be happy to give you some key messages related basically to these 5 items. I will spend a little bit more time talking about impact on viticulture, and the third one, that is ripening goes wild. That is exactly what's happening over the last years. Well, I think that one good way to start is actually remembering that Charles Darwin, many years ago, already said that kind of sentence that is reported at the bottom of this slide, and that basically that the species that is able to adapt to climate change will be actually be the one to survive. And he was right. He was right. And today we understand the value of that thought that he did actually 200 years ago. Okay. Well, I think that, I mean, all the people in this chat are pretty much convinced that climate change is real. Okay. Although, I mean, there are many ways that we can use to demonstrate that what is happening now is just not part of a cycle, but it's just a change. And the thing that I like very much to show, to actually confirm this kind of statement, is if you look at this graph, this is an impressive graph. I mean, if you look at the top panel of this graph, you see this is the amount of CO2 in the air, so the CO2 concentration in the atmosphere. And this is not a mistake. This graph goes back until 400,000 years ago. So that's some time ago, right? And you notice that in this kind of time window that is extremely long, the CO2 concentration never went up or above the threshold of 300 ppm. Now, today, if you measure CO2 concentration outside, we are at 450. And by the end of the century, predictions are to be close to 600. Well, I think that this is really a demonstration that something happened at some time that changed completely the scenario. And what happened was basically the Industrial Revolution, right? Because this steep rise in CO2 started at that time. And today here we are struggling, trying to mitigate this rise that is the primary cause of the global warming. Of course, I mean, another thing that should be actually analyzed, I'm still not talking about grapevine for just a minute, but I really like this kind of example as a general, I mean, phenomenon related to climate change. If you look at this map, okay, on the left hand side of the slide, you see this is the map of Uganda, and it's a map for coffee growing in Uganda today, okay? And you see that there are 3 colors, the brown, the light brown, and the white. Well, the best area is the brown area, okay? The reasonable area to grow coffee is orange, whereas when the color is white, well, that's not suited for growing coffee. But if you take that map and you imagine that the warming takes temperature to +2 degrees, well, the map would actually transform into the one that you see on your right left-hand side, where basically coffee has disappeared from Uganda. Well, that is a very nice example on how climate change can affect basically worldwide, absolutely, the distribution of different crops. And the issue of the grapevine, we have to, understand that something major is happening right now. Okay, now let's enter the viticulture part. And, it's not a surprise that, vineyards are being planted also in Northern Europe. This is a trend on time over the last 18 years or something of the vineyard increase in UK, all right? And you see that there is a steep increase. And, the other issue is that even if you look at the labels of wine bottles, for instance, from UK, you have a perception that something is changing. If you look at those bottles, those are actually wine bottles, although, they are fairly weird, right? But today, this is a kind of wine bottles that in UK is actually marketed. And those are very serious bottles, as you can see. And this is a trend. Okay, this is indeed a trend that reminds me of the old European country style. Okay, so something is really happening. Of course, this is good for these countries, but however, for us, climate change, when we grow grapes in a temperate climate that is becoming a hot climate in summer, well, that means that we might have a lot of issues. I have chosen 5 different images to make you understand what the challenge today for us. This is flooding, extensive flooding that took place last year in our region. This is another picture that was taken. Look at that. This is not a mistake. The picture was truly taken the 2nd of January last year. And here we are in the south of Italy. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with the grapevine growing, but on the 2nd of January, it's not common having already leaves on the vine. And that is, of course, an expression of climate change. This is a very extremely anticipated bud burst. And then we have the hail problem, we have the late frost problem, we have the drought problem. And overall, if we take Italy, I think that out of these 5 occurrences, at least one would happen every year. And so what we need to do is also a sort of risk assessment, okay? Well, the first point I would like to just briefly analyze with you is exactly the geographical distribution of the main grapevine varieties, okay? Now, this is just a very simple diagram showing 4 different climatic zones. So we have a cool climate, temperature, warm or hot climate, okay? And these are actually the niche, the temperature niche of each cultivar that is actually taken into consideration. Of course, here you have the early ripening cultivars like Mueller, Turgau, or Pinot Gris, all right? And then you have some late ripening. Let's take the Pinot Noir example. Well, the Pinot Noir is famous French variety that it's actually an international variety for the other countries. And of course, what we know is that the optimum temperature for growing Pinot Noir is between this point and that point, all right? And the midpoint, of course, is the Bourgogne region. That is, of course, mandatory. Now, of course, if we have 2 different locations where it's slightly cooler or warmer than the average, we can still grow Pinot Noir, of course. But look at what happened in the famous 2003. For those who are old enough to remember, that has been an extremely dry and hot season, all right? And even in Bourgogne, on that specific year, it was too hot to grow Pinot Noir. Well, now the question is, no decent Pinot Noir wine around the world in 2003? Of course, that was not the case, right? However, this is happening more frequently. very frequently now. And it's not just an exception, but it is something that I would say might happen every, couple of years. And so the return time of this has increased a lot. And this is the other problem. It would take a lot of time to analyze this kind of figures, but I would like to draw your attention to this one here. This is a very simple graph showing harvest dates for Chardonnay. Chardonnay is the empty circles, and Cabernet Sauvignon, that is actually the squares. And those are harvest dates in Australia. As a matter of fact, you see that the harvest is February and March, just because we are actually talking about the other hemisphere. Well, now, if you take data at the beginning of the 90s, we had 3 weeks difference between the harvest date between these two varieties. But if you come closer and you get basically to 2012, now this has been reduced to only 9 days. What does that mean? It does mean that basically the ripening is compressed by the global warming in a smaller time window, and that makes everything more complicated. Okay. Just to, provide you with one impressive example. Okay, in Italy, we do a lot of sparkling wine. Okay, it's not just the Prosecco, of course, but we have close to our region the Franciacorta area that's very famous for spumante wines, and the most important variety grown there for sparkling is Chardonnay, right? Now, Chardonnay is basically an early ripening variety, right? And the heat requirements for actually having optimal ripening in Chardonnay is 1500 degree days. Degree days is an amount of heat, all right? Now, look at the heat availability that was recorded in year 2022. That is exactly this curve, you see. Well, this curve would intersect the dotted line on a date that is unbelievable, the 29th of July. So that means that to comply with the expected quality of the grapes that we are looking for sparkling, we should have harvested our grapes at the end of July. This is really a sort of terrible advancement in ripening. Now, solutions. Well, finding solutions in the short term is not easy. I would say it's almost impossible, right? However, one thing that might help a lot is, Italy is quite famous because we have a huge biodiversity in our grapevine cultivar selection, right? We grow more than 600 different varieties. And we also have some varieties that are called autochthonous or minor varieties because they are just grown on a few hectares. However, you see here, there is a comparison between the relationship between total soluble solids, basically sugar concentration, and malic acid. Malic acid is an important organic acid in the grapes. And this is drawn for different cultivars. And the reference cultivar is Ortrugo, that is this nice one here. And the curve for Ortrugo is this one, okay? And you see that when the sugar gets fairly high, well, the malic acid basically disappears. And this is not good if you want to make a sparkling, right? But luckily enough, if we take the other minor cultivars and we actually plot the same curves, you would notice that at the same breaks, the other cultivars will maintain higher malic acid. And this is very good because here we have a solution that is based on genetics And genetics, of course, is a permanent solution, as it always happens. Jumping, oh no, I cannot jump this because this is so funny. Because, you know, if you ask me, hey, professor, can you tell us which are the cultivars more tolerant to drought than others? Well, it depends on how many cultivars we want to take into consideration. But just look at this picture again. This top row here is of Sangiovese. Sangiovese is the main red cultivar that is grown in Italy. We grow more than 65,000 hectares of Sangiovese, top variety, okay? And this is a Montepulciano row, okay? They are actually, the picture was taken in the same vineyard, okay, so they were just nearby, right? And of course, looking at the Sangiovese row, you would say, you would judge that there was a water stress going on, right? Because if you look at the basal part of the canopy, you see that there are already some yellow leaves. Whereas if you look at the Montepulciano, you would say, wow, that's great. There is no symptoms of stress, right? And so if we all together are going to give a score, we should say, well, Montepulciano is very okay, and Sangiovese is very bad. Well, believe it or not, and that is one of the reasons why a Master of Science can be very helpful in this case, it is exactly the opposite, right? Exactly the opposite. Because for some physiological reason, the Montepulciano has a very rapid reaction to the drought. The Montepulciano will close the stomates, and when the stomates are closed, of course, it can save water, but there is no photosynthesis. And if there is no photosynthesis, there is no sugar for us. Whereas the Sangiovese is a very clever cultivar, because he knows that he has to sacrifice something to the drought, and he is sacrificing the basal part of the canopy, but the apical part of the canopy is still working. And so basically the Sangiovese is assuring more photosynthesis than the Montepulciano, despite this kind of bad look that the Sangiovese has. I'm trying to cut a little bit, otherwise we will actually be a bit, because I know when we start talking about this kind of issues, always it takes time. But no, the other item that I really would like to mention is irrigation. Okay, well, you know that in Europe, traditionally, there is the sort of tendency to say, well, you know, if you want to really make great quality grapes, you should not use irrigation, right? Irrigation is somewhat regarded as a tool that would actually force too much the yield part and would actually deteriorate the quality issue. When the climate change comes, I think that you are going to change completely the attitude towards irrigation. And let me just show you basically, again, the graphs here. This is a summary of data that are actually taken from Bordeaux in France. Okay, so Bordeaux is a great region, right, for viticulture, one of the famous in the world. And you see here, you have 70 years of data, almost 70 years of data with a sort of rainfall pattern, okay? And I mean, if you look from 1951 to 2015, cannot really say that there is a big variation in the annual amount of rain. It's a sort of fluctuations, but not a given trend. Whereas if you look at this graph here, well, you would notice that starting from the end of the 90s, well, until today, there has been an increase. And what is this? Well, this is a so-called amount of evapotranspiration. What does that mean? It does mean that in June, July, and August in Bordeaux, due to the global warming, okay, the amount of water that the atmosphere is asking to the vine has increased by up to 150 millimeters in a year.
And this is an additional stress factor that we really need to take into consideration, okay? Then the other issue is, okay, now you convinced me. I have to use irrigation, but I'm not used to it. I don't know when to start. I don't know how much water to supply. I don't know anything. Is there anything that can actually help me out of this? Well, we do have a lot of the information today. For instance, I think that you have heard about big data analytics, okay? This is part of the, revolution that is undergoing in terms of information and communication technologies, even in viticulture. Well, through the big data analytic approach, and we have a couple of projects on that topic, we can build models, okay, that can forecast the occurrence of a water stress in the vineyard. So, in other words, we can advise the grower in terms of, stay calm, no problem, or hey, get ready because the stress is going to come. And this is an example. You see, this is a dashboard of the program that we have recently published. Of course, if you are interested in having all the details of this data, you can contact me and I will take you to the full paper published. But you see here in the top panel, you have the seasonal evolution of the level of stress in your vineyard. And so until you have the green color, that's no problem. Then at a given point, this system is able to warn you, to send a warning message to your phone and telling you, hey, you are entering a moderate Aller situation, or when you enter the red part, you will be having really the risk of a high stress. So again, we can guide the grower on that. This is really neat. And for those who are not probably familiar with the vineyard, that seems very ugly, actually. I understand that it's not very elegant having a vineyard looking like this. However, this picture is basically the difference between the row that has been sprayed with a compound that's called kaolin. Okay, kaolin is a very simple white clay that, of course, being white, has a reflective property for light. So in other words, is a cooling compound. And when you take a thermal picture of this row, you see that this part shows only blue and green color, whereas in this part you see also a lot of red spots. And that means that the temperature in the part of the canopy that is not protected with kaolin is definitely higher than the temperature we have in the part that is protected with kaolin. And there is another reason why kaolin is very interesting. It is very, very cheap, okay? Not very expensive. Remember, economic sustainability is always a priority. Anytime we propose a new technology, anytime we propose a new cultural practice. I'm using 5 more minutes. Is that okay if I'm using 5 more minutes, basically? I hope so. Well, the last point is, well, unfortunately, it's something that we have experienced also these days in several regions, in several parts in northern Italy, and it's a frost damage. It's very sad having the vineyard looking like A, B, or C, okay? This is a full frost damage, A and B. This is a partial frost damage. But again, it's something that is happening, and it actually very dramatic because the risk when the frost damage is very late, that we are losing not just the harvest from this year, but that we are losing the harvest of 2 years in a row. And that is really devastating for a grower. And to try to mitigate the risk of frost damage, we also studied and actually, this has been again published recently, a technique that is basically based on a very delayed winter pruning. Usually, we prune our vines in winter during dormancy, right? Well, with this technique, we want to prune on purpose the vines late in the seasons when they have started already to actually burst on the apical part of the canes, because we want to maintain dormant the basal nodes that we will then use for our cropping. And so the hope is that the frost will come when these shoots are out, so these shoots can be sacrificed, but at the same time we will have other buds that are safe because they are dormant, and so we will recover the full production even if we add a frost damage. And again, that's very helpful for growers. Just a couple. Oh, by the way, one thing that is worth mentioning is when we talk about frost damage, well, the frost damage is an expression of cold, right? Of low temperatures. But here I have been talking for almost 20 minutes about global warming. So isn't this contradictory, right? So why are you talking about global warming and that you are showing us frost damage? Well, unfortunately, it's not contradictory at all, because the main effect of the global warming is on the phenology of the plant. And if it's warmer in spring, the bud burst is greatly anticipated, okay? And so at that point, when the frost comes, it finds the vine on a stage where the susceptibility to the frost is very high, okay? And that is, of course, really frustrating, but this is what is happening. I don't want to advertise too much, but this is just a picture showing a book that I wrote almost a year and a half ago that is actually trying to, go into more details about the interactions between viticulture and climate change. Don't look at this at the library. You will not find it. It's available online only. Okay. But I mean, if you need details, I can give that to you. Okay. Now this is my final scientific slide. Well, thanking you for your attention. This is supposed to be a new training system. That is also my wish for anybody of you that are entering the career in viticulture and enology. If I'm right, Arianna, I should go ahead and making
Correct.
About
Thank you, Prof. Poni. Thank you for this masterclass. That was interesting, insightful. And this is part of what
just
potential
appeal.
students, right? Appeal of what
That's
students
wrong.
can actually get into and in depth if they decide to apply and they get admitted into the Master of Science in Sustainable Viticulture and Enology. Yeah, I leave the floor to you for this slide as well, because who better than you?
Arianna, you were just right, because the purpose of the masterclass was also just to provide just a few examples on what would be the content and the atmosphere that the students will find in the room, actually. So I mean, the topic is really challenging. Back to the Master of Science in Sustainable Viticulture and Enology. Of course, it is entirely given in English. But one thing that I would like to mention is that we will have a very international class, because I would say that maybe half of the students are Italians, but then we have at least usually 6, 7, 8 more represented countries, overseas, European students and others. One thing that I really would like to stress out is that an experimental thesis is mandatory for graduation. And this is a good part, or I mean, one of my favorite part, because the experimental thesis will be chosen by you, and we propose a range of topics. And the range of topics deals with basically all the research projects that we are actually running right now. So we will be entering the team, actually collaborating in the experimental layout, the data collection, and maybe having also your name on the final publication. Well, the other thing is usually, at least in Italy, running with a Master of Science does not allow you to have an internship, right? Whereas in this case, you can, because you can still choose the option of actually having a short internship that will replace one of the two elective exams. We have a large networks of wineries and wine industries, and so we can also find, maybe if you have a preference for I want to go to Tuscany, we can help you out. And finally, before I just quit, the big news. The big news are first, well, this is not a news, but we already have already in place two semester exchange options. One is with Adelaide, Australia, and Ricardo will actually tell you about that in a minute. And the other one is with Geisenheim in Germany. Geisenheim, University of Geisenheim is an outstanding scientific institution in Europe for viticulture and enology. But I would really try to put a lot of emphasis. Enrolling this year, okay, will allow you also to option the double degree program. Okay, we have signed finally a double degree program with the École Supérieure d'Agriculture in Angers in France, right? And so, for instance, upon enrollment, you will be asked, do you want to have your entire master in Italy, or you want to have the master split in 2 years, one in Italy and one in France? That's going to be up to you. Okay? Well, thank you for listening.
Thank you, Professor Poni. We'll get back to you with questions later.
Sure.
But thank you for this, for sure. Ricardo, your turn now. Hello.
Hi.
I would say you are the living example of the international soul of this master degree. You are Italian,
Yes.
but you just got back from Adelaide, right?
Yes.
So before, yeah, please.
Yeah, no.
I would say you just got back from Adelaide, but you're Italian. And before we even talk about your experience abroad, tell us more about you. Like, what is your bachelor background? And I'm asking you because here today we have students like enrolled in bachelor degrees. Maybe some of them already have a bachelor title, and they might be wondering whether this is a good fit for them. This program, Sustainable Viticulture and Enology. We never talk about the best university. We never talk about the best program. We always talk about the best fit. So I'm interested in getting to know more about you so the student can somehow relate to your experience.
Yeah, sure. So hi, everybody. Ricardo. I've already I've done a bachelor here in Cattolica. It was already a bachelor in English. It was called Food Production Management. It's actually still running, and it's a bachelor that was basically a very wide curriculum in agriculture and food technology, both sides of the food chain, let's say. And I did this bachelor. I graduated in 2022 here in English, and then I enrolled in this BE program almost 2 years ago at this point. And I'm finishing up. This is my last semester, and
Last semester, so you're writing your final dissertation, I guess. Professor Poni just mentioned it has to be an experimental final thesis. What is it about? What's the topic you are researching?
So I'm at this moment we're just still running the experimental part, so the trials, and it's in the enology area. So it's about novel woods and wood application in wine aging. In this case, we're looking into juniper and oak. So the comparisons between also like the aromatic impact that different woods would have on wine. Very, very interesting.
Ooh la la. Yes, that sounds interesting from many perspectives, I would say. Could you work on your final thesis and dissertation while in Adelaide? Because now I'm curious to know more about the exchange, the semester you did abroad.
Yes, it is allowed, and actually the professor very strongly suggested it, as the research projects they have are very different from us, from the ones here in Cattolica. So it would have been an extra thing that would be really, really interesting. The problem is that I was a little bit delayed in applying for the exchange and setting everything up. So if anyone is interested in doing the exchange semester in Adelaide, or Geisenheim for that reason, and doing their thesis abroad, I suggest you to start speaking with the professors before leaving, so you could find the project before arriving there. And in my experience, the professors I met in Adelaide were extremely helpful and open and very, very willing to help you find something to work for your thesis on in there.
No, it makes total sense. Different universities, different institutions, you get, let's say, the best of both institutions. And also, I would say, Professor Poni, different perspectives, because I guess the way we work and the way we research is not exactly the same what they do. That's the big plus of having an international experience within an international experience, because you're Italian, but many students might be international students studying in Italy and willing to have an even more international, experience just going abroad. So this is
if
the advantage.
you let me add something, Arianna. I mean, the kind of relationship we had with Adelaide is especially strong because we have a specific agreement with them that also involves, for instance, teaching exchange. For just give you a very simple and straight example, last year, and this will happen again next year, this year, basically, in the fall, we had Carrie Wilkinson, that is professor of enology of Adelaide, coming over physically. I'm not talking about remote, okay? Physically in Piacenza, and giving us the course in topics in enology. And of course, this is a great enrichment in terms of content. And of course, she's bringing all the issues that are typical for Australia. For instance, they have a lot of fires. And so the smoke taint issue is very important for their wines. But that would actually broaden the perspective of our students. That is what they will need when they will send out their first curriculum for finding actually a job. And that is my forecast.
I agree. That's a big plus in the curriculum that makes you really stand out. And I believe this is what being international really means. It's not, and this is for the students here, it's not just a translation of something you offer in your local, like native language, local language, that would be Italian translated into English. No, it's totally different. It's a different curriculum. It's a different perspective. So thank you for pointing that out, Professor Poni. I completely agree as an international officer, let's say. Riccardo, now back to you. Now I'm curious. So you did study food production management at Piacenza, and yes, the program is still running, a bachelor degree. What are, let's say, the main reason, if there's one, maybe there are more, that led you to this decision, so to stay and keep on studying in English and keep on studying in Piacenza?
So I really didn't have my mind set up when I joined the bachelor of working and studying enology and viticulture. But I grew up in an area here that is still quite, viticulture and enology here is very present. Like everywhere you look, there's a vineyard, there's many wineries all over the place. So I grew up in this, kind of environment. And then during the bachelor, I had, as I said, a very wide curriculum. So I had a couple of courses, one in enology and one in viticulture with Professor Poni, that really opened up my mind to this sector, and I really liked both studying the grapes and the wine and everything that is interconnected in there. So yes, I would say Professor Poni kind of.
Yeah, no, I'm very happy, Arianna, that Riccardo didn't say that it was forcing him to stay. No, it was just a free choice, all right? I would like to point this out.
Listen, but it seems that wine is in Ricardo's DNA. So that was kind of a first choice, but that was not because of you. But Ricardo, how would you describe your life, your experience as a sustainable viticulture and enology students? For the international, students listening to us, how would you describe your life as a student now, so they can picture in their minds what would that be to be in Piacenza, studying with you, studying with Professor Poni, and with international classmates?
Yeah, so I know for maybe like international people, Piacenza is not that fancy, doesn't sound as cool as Milan or Rome or whatever, but we're very lucky. We're in a very central position, so you can travel everywhere in Italy. And I mean, I grew up here, but many of my classmates have been traveling all over the place. They've enjoyed Italy a lot. So traveling is, I would say, either if you don't want to like visit the area around, but also with the possibility of doing the exchange or doing the double degree. So the looking around here is like traveling and seeing everywhere, other places is very important, I would say, in this program. The life here, I would say, other than that, is studying, which of course is an important part, and it's you have to apply yourself because the courses are very detailed. But if you enjoy the topic, they're amazing, and they don't feel like a burden at all to study this subjects. And the other part, I would say, is drinking, because if you're studying wine, you should taste the wine. So in a very scientific way, of course, but
sure.
The only problem with Ricardo, he likes more enology than viticulture. That is something that they cannot stand. But I mean, we can forgive him. He's a very nice and bright student, actually.
So let's say traveling. No, I was thinking that Piacenza, it's true what you said, Riccardo, in the minds and in the eyes of international students might sound as not as fancy as a city like Milan. But as I said at the beginning of the masterclass, the presentation, first of all, is not far from there. If you want, really, by train, it takes you an hour to get to Milano. But we're talking today to an audience interested in a Master of Science degree. So as I said, they must be aware of the location. You want to study viticulture, even before enology, as Professor Poni just said, that's the place to be. Piacenza is the place to be. It's what we call the Italian Food Valley. The number of vineyards we have in Italy and in that region, in that area specifically, is incredible. So you have to keep this into consideration, and also the network of the university, the network of the faculty, because you really have the chance, as Professor Poni was saying, to do an internship at one of our partner companies, to work on the ground. That's too important, especially if you are a Master of Science student.
But then even just the field visits that we have in the course, like you experience so much of the different wineries, different
and that's part of the experience, and that's because it's located in Piacenza, and it's true, and not anywhere else. Which advice would you give to future potential students? What would you recommend?
I don't know. I guess international students aren't as scared as Italian people of studying in English, but if that's a concern at all, don't be, because it's being in the room with so many international people. After the first 2 weeks of being with international people, the language is not a barrier at all. And other than that, I don't know, if you come here, enjoy everything. The city, the hills, the university is really worth it, I think.
Thank you, Riccardo. So take advantage of the professors, of the local Italian students we have on campus, and of international student community. Time is running fast. So thank you, Riccardo, for sharing this with us. I know that potential students always appreciate listening to the real life experience of current student at Cattolica. But I'm sure that potential students listening to us now, they would want to know how to apply for sustainable viticulture and enology, right? It's time to do that. first of all, it's time to do that. You have time to do that. Officially, the application deadline for non-European Union students willing to study with us this coming September is in a couple of days, while European Union students, meaning students living in Italy or just having an EU passport, not needing a visa, they have time to apply until the end of June. If you just got to know about this master today and you feel like, oh my God, I do not have enough time because I do not have the time to collect all the documents and the certificates that I need, do not be worried about that. You just send us an email. Later on, I will share our international office contact information. Tell us that you want to apply for this coming September. You don't have the time to submit the application by May the 9th, and we'll make sure we understand a little bit more about the situation and advise you in the best way possible, okay? But be aware of the timeline, especially if you are non-European students, because, you will need to apply for a visa at some point to study in Italy, okay? Entry requirements, very important. Professor Poni, which kind of background do we want our students to have? Let's say the best fit for this program in terms of academic background.
Arianna, very important point. Because the thing that is untrue is that to enter, you need absolutely a specific requirement in viticulture and enology. This is, of course, great if you have it, but if you don't have it, you can run for admission anyway, provided that you basically have a bachelor that in some ways has to do with agricultural science, but including biotechnology, landscapes and food economics. So we have broadened it up a lot, the range of bachelors that can be admitted, right? Of course, if you have a bachelor in philosophy, that's different. And also one thing that it comes out very often, maybe we have good candidates, they are very passionate about wine. And they say, okay, I am a bachelor in philosophy, but I spent several years in wineries and traveling. I have made that. Unfortunately, that cannot be taken into consideration for the admission. One more thing that I would like to mention is, since we are very aware that some students not having run a specific background in enology and viticulture cannot feel very comfortable with some viticulture and enology basics, okay? We offer for free pre-courses in viticulture, enology, and plant pathology that are actually taken 2 weeks before the beginning of the official program, all right? So basically, keep in mind that the official program starts the last week in September, and so basically second and third week in September, if you are already in Italy, you can spend your time also following these pre-courses.
Thank you, Prof. Very important. And other than the academic background, English is important.
Oh yeah,
I
of
mentioned
course,
this
of
a
course.
few times.
Yeah,
It's English taught the program, right? So people listening today, you need to have an English language proficiency certificate. Okay, we need a B2 level, which is an upper intermediate. It's an IELTS, it's a TOEFL. Everything is explained in detail on the university website. You'll be able to get in touch with us, but English is important because you need to communicate with the other students. You need to interact with the faculty. Academic qualifications, well, Professor Poni gave you an idea on which kind of background we'd like to see when we receive an application. Just make sure that your bachelor degree is obtained by the end of July. Okay, because you might be a student enrolled in the final year of a bachelor degree. That's absolutely okay. The majority of the applications we receive are of students still enrolled in their bachelor degree. That's fine. Just make sure that you get that certificate before we start classes and by the end of July, especially if you need to apply for a visa. Money matters, and we know that. So here you have an idea of the tuition fees per year, which is about 6,600 euros for students living in the European Union countries. And also there's a flat tuition fee for non-European Union students, so living outside of the European Union countries, which is 9,000 per year. But you can apply for what we call the UCSC International Scholarship, which is a partial merit-based scholarship. So without further ado, I'm sharing this QR code with you because, as I said, it's time to apply. The deadline for Know Your Students is coming up soon. EU students have more time, but please do not hesitate. Scan this QR code and start your application on Università Cattolica's website. If you have any question, okay, after this webinar about the application procedure, the requirements, course details, application timeline, we're here to support you. international.inquiry@unicat.it. I will personally get back to you. I promise. I know, Luke, that it's almost time for the Q&A session, so I will just turn off my microphone and leave the floor to you and Professor Poni and Riccardo to answer the questions that hopefully we received during this amazing masterclass.
Great. Well, thank you very much, everyone, especially Professor Poni for the masterclass, of course, and Riccardo already for your student experience. I saw that was appreciated by the audience. Yes, let's go to the questions from the audience. We have a question from Helga. It's asking how to apply. Well, I actually put a link in the chat as well. I will put it up on the screen in a little bit as well, just to make sure to drive you to the right page. And there's a question if there are monthly installments available. Is that possible?
It's not monthly installment, but different installments. You're not supposed to pay the full tuition in one single shot, so do not be worried about that. There is a deposit you need to pay if you are admitted to reserve your seat into the program, and then the rest of the tuition fee is going to be paid in different installments. It's usually 4 to 5, so do not be worried about that.
I think that one thing worth mentioning before we wait for the questions is that for now, the available seats for the double degree is 5, okay? So it's a limited number because we want to start with a fairly reasonable number of students. And so we will see how it goes. But I mean, 5 is the maximum that you can accept. And please consider that at the time of enrollment, you do not have right away to make your option for the double or the normal. You will be asked later on what you would like to do. Okay, so don't worry about, I mean, having already I mean, it's not mandatory actually showing now your option.
Okay, thank you for adding that. That was actually one of the questions I saw in the questions as well. Aniruti was wondering about the maximum number of students, so I understand that is limited.
Well, in general, I would say that we do have a maximum number of students that is supposed to be 20 students. Okay. And this is basically a choice from us, because on a statistical basis, anytime you start going over that number, you become 25, 30, 35, then of course, the quality of the course can be impaired, because, I mean, it's difficult to maintain the same high quality when you get really a large number of people. So I would say 20 for sure. Then, of course, if there are 2 more people, we can accept them, right? But yeah, 20 people. And out of the 20, 5 can be for the double.
Yep. Okay, thank you. Question from Gandra, I think, was answered, but just to make sure, is there any internship available?
Well, the internship, as I explained, is a free choice of the student. In other words, the student who wants to run also for the internship will actually indicate that, and the student will make a short internship that's going to be about 5 weeks, because it should be equivalent to 150 hours of work. And with that internship, he can replace one of the 2 elective courses. Okay. I mean, I feel that, I mean, the primary goal of a Master of Science is not actually going on an internship, right? I would be more, I mean, focused on the scientific part and experimental thesis. However, I know that, you know, an internship is always appealing, And oh, we have a lot of options. I mean, we have on the website, we have the list of possible hosts, and we can find indeed an interesting location for everyone.
Okay. Thank you.
I see that some people are typing, but nothing comes out from the typing. So I mean,
well, there are a lot of questions already there, so I will read them out. However, but could be some people still writing. Question about scholarships. Omar was asking, is there any scholarship for the master? Well, you did mention something about this, Ariana. Is there
Correct.
anything you want to add to that?
It's called UCSC International Scholarship. It's a partial merit-based scholarship dedicated to non-European Union students. How do you apply for that? It's one single application form for the program and for the scholarship. Omar, right? You will see that within the application form for the program, there is a section dedicated to scholarship with a very easy and self-explanatory question asking, do you wish to apply for the UCSC scholarship? You just say yes, and we will evaluate your application documents, not just for the program, but also for the scholarship. So when you get a feedback on your eligibility and admission into the Master of Science degree, you also get a feedback on your eligibility for the scholarship. And you know, with one single email, one single feedback, if you have been admitted, if you are a recipient for the UCSC scholarship.
Okay, thank you. I think related to the application, just to make sure, Helga was just asking, do I need to register to your portal to apply? Because indeed you gave a link.
Yes,
to
yes,
the
that's
portal.
the link. That's the link.
That's the one.
You click on apply now, you sign up, and you create your online application and you submit.
Yeah. Okay, so just to mention that, we're getting thumbs up, so I guess that is clear. Let's see, Misha, a question. What is the probability to find a job in the EU? Good point.
Well, I'm not surprised by the question, because apparently we have a lot of people coming also from overseas, and they really don't want to go back home when they're finished. That is kind of neat. Well, let me answer you this. I don't know unemployed people coming out from our Master of Science. I'm really serious. I have no unemployed. Then, you know, finding a job in Europe or that is, of course, something that I cannot guarantee. But the unemployment rate is equal to 0. Just to be very clear and frank. Because there is a huge request, not just for graduates, for good graduates in viticulture and enology. And believe me, although Ricardo prefers enology, and we forgive him for that, but the big challenges today are not in the winery, they are in the vineyard. Because with this climate change, every day we have a new problem in the vineyard. It can either be a disease, it can either be a nutrient deficiency or a physiological imbalance. And we need more knowledge, we need more expertise in viticulture. Well, I teach viticulture, and so maybe I'm a fan of viticulture, but I really believe so.
Great, thank you for that addition. And yeah, I hope that answered that question. Let's see, we have a question, well, maybe on topic, or I think from the masterclass. Gandhara was asking, how is it useful to normal farmers and how can they utilize viticulture? I don't know if you can say something about this very briefly.
Well, of course, here we are talking about a very specific crop, right?
Exactly.
But no, I don't want to skip the question. For instance, one of the major topics that we have today in viticulture, and not just in viticulture, is floor management, soil management. There is a huge emphasis on soil health, conservation of organic matter, conservation of biodiversity. And you know, the vineyard ecosystem is really a nice gym for this kind of approach. But again, you will be studying also some approaches that can be actually valid and applied, I mean, to other fruit crops or even to veg crops. So as well as we have at least 3 courses in our Master of Science dealing with precision agriculture. Well, in that case, it's precision viticulture, but though those techniques are really, sort of applicable to many, many different crops. Then, of course, you need to drink wine, right? That is the bottom line of everything. Sometimes you need to drink a glass of wine.
I'm sure that is not the biggest problem for the applicants, but well, great. Thank you for that feedback. Next question from Clara: when exactly does the semester start?
Okay, yeah, the semester starts officially. The first semester starts the last week in September. Okay, but again, if the student is interested in attending the pre-courses, those are fairly, packed lectures giving the basics in viticulture and enology. Then those will be actually held 2 weeks earlier. So basically 2nd and 3rd week in September.
Okay, thank you for clearing that up. Valeria had a question: what certificate do I receive upon finishing the study?
That's a Master of Science degree. It's a 2-year Master of Science degree. In Italy, we don't really have, in Italian, you wouldn't really have this distinction between Master of Arts and Master of Science, honestly, but it's a 2-year master degree program. It means that after that, Valeria, you can apply for a PhD at any Italian or international university, just to make it clear. So it's a very academic focused, research focused program lasting 2 years. After that, if you want PhD, if you want to keep on studying and researching, otherwise you start your job career, you start working.
Great, thank you. And for now, the last question we received from Sergey: can I complete your program only from France? Because I think you referred to the double degree that you have.
Well, Sergey, if you stay in France, you will have, of course, only the Master of Science from Angers. I mean, for having the double degree, you have to attend, of course, the 2 different years in the 2 respective countries, because, of course, our rules are different from ESA rules. And if you want to boast 2 degrees, you need to be, physically here and, having the attendance needed. And I must say that one thing that students are asking is, are the lectures still given remotely, right? And the answer is no, no, and no, because, I mean, we would like still having people in our class, right? However, we still maintain the recordings of the lectures. And that is very important, especially, for instance, for Italian students. Some of them, they also have a job, okay? So they both work and study. And so going home at night, having the possibility to listen again to the lectures is very helpful. So this kind of help has been maintained, but there is no more remote lectures.
Perfect. Thank you. And we did get another question. Michel asked, does Ricardo have a job already or any prospects? Ricardo.
Not yet.
No, not yet. Not yet. I want to finish my course fully without any distractions.
Also, I would not recommend trying to have a job before finishing the master. Please go ahead, take your degree, and then you can proceed. But try not to overlap too many things. For instance, the 2nd year in our master is very much concentrated about the thesis, right? But that thesis is an experimental thesis. It takes time. It takes time because you have to take data, process the data, run the statistical analysis, and do the writing. And so I would think, please concentrate on that.
yeah, that becomes your job for a semester. So
Absolutely.
Great. Well, good to hear. Thank you for your feedback. Also, yeah, Sergey is saying thank you. We got various thank yous actually from the chat already as well. So with that, let's wrap up this session. I would like to thank from my side everyone that joined in from, first of all, the audience. We had a lot of people from different countries joining in: Germany, Argentina, Spain, India, Sweden, Czech Republic, Russia, well, Romania. A lot of people. They could possibly be your fellow colleagues or students, your students in your class next year, who knows. But of course, also thank you to, especially for the masterclass from Professor Poni. Thank you very much for your insights. I think that was very interesting. And of course, Ariana and Ricardo, thank you very much, both of you. I'm going to see how we did, because I have a last polling question open to the audience. Actually, I have two. Sorry, I had one more that we wanted to know if you're interested to apply. For when would that be? So please let us know your answers there as well, if you're considering to apply. By the way, if you're watching the recording, all of you, I know these days a lot of people do, you can all participate in the polls as well. So you can still answer that and those questions from before as well. So please do. So let us know in the polling, and I see they're coming in, and already from their other questions as well. And then I have the last polling to know how we did. And so I'll put it right over our heads as well here. Sorry about that, but thank you for answering that. And whilst that is being answered, maybe a last word from, I don't know, Ariana or Professor Poni.
Oh, Ariana. I've been talking too much already. I don't need to talk anymore.
Bennett, so we hope to see you here in September. So really hope to see you here. Thank you for being with us today. Again, if you wish to get in touch with us for any question, we're here, international.inquiry@unicat.it. Thank you, Luke, and thank you, everyone. Professor Poni, Ricardo, that was a pleasure.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. Bye all. Bye all.
we did.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Luke. Bye-bye.